Neon reflected off the hotel's glass doors like the city was bleeding color. I jammed my last 35mm body into my canvas bag. Canon AE1, duct tape on the grip, the kind of camera that still smelled like Fixer, and yanked out my brick of a phone. Not a smartphone. A cordless with an antenna that had snapped once and got splinted with a paperclip. 11 missed calls, all from city parking enforcement. I didn't even have to listen to the voicemail to feel my stomach drop. I hit play anyway, because hope is dumb like that. This is an automated notice. Your vehicle has been towed from the hotel's temporary loading zone. Retrieve within 24 hours to avoid additional storage fees. Of course it was the loading zone. Of course it was the same manager in the tan blazer who'd pointed at his watch like he was timing a bomb. 30 minutes, he'd said. That's it. I'd left it 3 hours. 3 hours of corporate smiles, champagne flutes, executives posing like mannequins under tungsten lights while I chased candid moments for people who never wanted to look candid. Freelance photography didn't pay enough to make mistakes in Chicago. Lily tugged my sleeve, small fingers cold through the damp wool. Her face was pinched and sleepy, cheeks flushed from a day that had gone on too long. Mommy, I'm hungry. I know, baby. I forced my voice to stay smooth, like the radio DJs who sounded calm even when the city was on fire. We'll find something. Outside, the rain wasn't rain anymore. It was a sheet of white noise. Loud, heavy, constant, like someone had dumped Lake Michigan straight onto downtown. The kind that turns sidewalks into rivers and makes cabs vanish like they got swallowed. I cracked open my wallet. 2 wrinkled 20s, 3 singles, quarters in the coin pocket, sticky with lint. $43. Tow fee was $200. Storage, tickets, the you thought you could park here penalties. My brain refused to add it up. Lily leaned against my leg. Water darkened the cuffs of her little pants. Her brown hair was already plastered to her forehead. She'd been a saint all evening, coloring quietly in the corner while I worked, like she'd learned early that patience was safer than asking for too much. She was 5. She should have been in bed. She should have been warm. Let's get dry, I said, because saying it like a plan almost made it one. The rain'll ease up soon. I checked the weather on my phone anyway, thumb slipping on the wet screen. 2 more hours. The cold went straight through my jacket like it knew exactly where I kept my fear. I scooped Lily up. Her hands were ice as she looped them around my neck. Across the street, a cafe glowed like a promise. Soft amber light, steam in the windows, music muffled behind glass. The kind of place with marble counters and tiny pastries that cost more than a gallon of gas. Not my world. But Lily was trembling, and I needed a phone line. A payphone. A miracle. Anything. The door was heavy. When I pushed inside, heat rolled over us. Coffee, vanilla, cinnamon, something buttery. For 1 second, my shoulders unclenched. Every table was taken. The room hummed with the late-night crowd. Suits loosened at the collar, rich coats draped over chairs, laughter that sounded practiced. Lily squeezed my hand like the noise itself could grab her. I scanned for a corner, any corner. In the back, one open table. Then I saw him. He was sitting alone, turned slightly so he could see the whole room without looking like he was watching. Dark coat, black hair curling at the edges like he'd run a hand through it too many times. Espresso untouched. Posture still, controlled. When his gaze landed on me, it didn't slide away like most men's did when they didn't want to get involved. It held. My throat went tight. My shoes squeaked on the tile. Lily shifted in my arms, her cheek pressed to my shoulder. I walked over anyway, because the alternative was the street. "Hi," I said, voice thinner than I wanted. "May I sit here? And if you're listening and you want the rest of this story, subscribe, because what happened next didn't feel like luck. It felt like a door opening that I didn't know existed." He looked at Lily first, not in a soft way, in a measuring way, then back to me. He didn't answer for a beat that lasted too long. Then he nodded once. "Sit," he said. Low, certain. "But you're not leaving right away." I didn't have time to unpack that. Lily's eyelids were fluttering, her head heavy. I slid into the chair and pulled her onto my lap, suddenly aware of how soaked I was, how tired, how close to cracking. He lifted 2 fingers to the server like he owned the air. Less than a minute later, a hot cocoa appeared in front of Lily, steam curling up like a warm breath, and a small pastry on a plate. I started to protest. The words rose up on reflex. I couldn't afford. He shook his head once, small, final, like my money didn't apply here. Lily stared at the pastry, then looked up at me for permission. I nodded. She broke off a piece and tried it, cautious at first, then with relief so obvious it hurt. The man's eyes didn't leave her. "How old?" he asked. 5, I said. He nodded like that confirmed something. I held Lily tighter, and the unease came back in a slow crawl. This place, this man, the way he took up space without trying. His suit was dark and clean-lined, tailored the way you only saw on TV villains and politicians. His watch caught the cafe light and flashed once, sharp as a signal. He didn't look approachable. He looked inevitable. He finally lifted his espresso and took one sip, then set it down like he'd only done it to prove he could. "What do you do?" I hesitated. It felt stupid in here to say what I was. "Photography," I said. "Freelance. I shot an event across the street and my car got towed. No apology, no sympathy, just a calm blink. How much to get it back?" My breath caught. I didn't come in here to beg. I came in here to keep my kid warm. I started. "I know," he said, like he'd read my thoughts off my face. "I'm not offering pity. I'm asking because I need a photographer this week." That landed differently. Work, not charity. He leaned forward, forearm on the table, voice quiet enough that the room couldn't steal it. "My mother turns 65, he said. "Private gathering. I don't want staged smiles. I want the real things. Hands on shoulders. The glance someone thinks nobody saw. You know how to catch that." I blinked. "I don't have a studio. I saw how you held your daughter," he said, and it was the first time his tone softened by half a degree. "That's what I'm hiring." He reached into his coat and pulled out a card, thick paper, textured, minimal, no address, just a name and a number. Vincent Moretti. The name hit like something I'd heard on the radio late at night between traffic reports and rumors. He placed it on the table, exactly between us. "Take it," he said, half up front. Every alarm in my body lit up. Nobody found work this way. Not in a storm. Not at night. Not with a man who looked like he'd never been told no. But Lily was warm now, sipping cocoa with both hands, her shoulders finally unclenching. The first hint of a smile all day curved her mouth. I picked up the card, anyway. Vincent's eyes didn't change. He didn't push. He didn't sell me. He just watched like the decision had already been made and he was letting me catch up. When we finally stood to leave, the rain had softened. Lily was asleep in my arms, head tucked under my chin. Outside the window, a black car rolled to the curb like it had been waiting the whole time. Vincent lifted his hand. One simple signal. The driver opened the back door. "Marcus will take you home," Vincent said. I didn't refuse fast enough. In the car, Lily breathed warm against my chest, and I stared through the fogged glass at Vincent standing under the streetlight. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just stood there, still as a statue, like the city belonged to him and the weather was only background noise. The card in my hand stayed warm from my grip, damp at the edges, and I knew, before I ever dialed that number, that taking his job wasn't the risky part. The risky part was that he'd already gotten close enough to matter. The next morning, I called from the kitchen, because it was the only room in my apartment that didn't make me feel like I was drowning. The linoleum was cracked. The radiator clicked like a metronome. The neighbor upstairs played the same Prince tape on loop, bass thumping through the ceiling like a second heartbeat. Lily was still asleep on the couch, curled around her stuffed bear. I stared at the business card again. Vincent Moretti. No address, no company, just a number, as if whoever he was didn't need a location to be found. I dialed. It rang once. A woman answered with a voice so calm it sounded pre-recorded, but it wasn't. It was too precise to be fake. "Miss Parker," she said. Not a question. My grip tightened on the phone. "Yes. Who is this?" "Mr. Moretti's office. If you agree to the engagement, the car will collect you tomorrow afternoon. Everything will be prepared." Prepared. The word made my skin prickle. "Prepared what?" I asked. "You won't need to bring anything except your camera," she said. "Wardrobe will be provided. A workspace. The event is in Lake Forest at the family residence, and the deposit has already been transferred." I hung up slow, like if I moved too fast, the whole thing would shatter. Deposit. I opened my email, fingers shaky, and there it was. A bank notification. $500. Cleared. A short note in the memo line. For trust. Nobody paid me up front. Clients like to delay, lose invoices, make me chase them like I was the one who needed forgiveness. This wasn't how my world worked. I walked a tight loop from sink to window to couch. Every instinct told me to send the money back and forget the whole thing. But Lily rolled over in her sleep and made a tiny sound. and my brain filled in the tow yard, the fees, the late bills, the next week. Fear kept my life small. It always had. And I was tired of Lily learning that small was the safest shape to be. The next afternoon, right on time, the black car came back. Marcus stepped out first, tall, clean-cut, the kind of man who looked like he could snap someone's wrist without wrinkling his suit. He opened the door with a slight bow that made my stomach twist, like I belonged in that car. The city blurred past as we drove north, the skyline fading behind us. Lily pressed her nose to the window, delighted by everything. The houses with yards, the trees, the quiet. When the car turned onto a stone-paved road hidden behind iron gates, my mouth went dry. The gates opened without a sound. Inside was a world that didn't feel real. The driveway was lined with evergreens trimmed so perfectly, they looked like they'd been cut with a ruler. The mansion beyond was gray stone and tall windows, severe and beautiful, like an old European movie my mother used to watch at night. Lily whispered, "Mommy, is this a castle?" I couldn't answer. My throat didn't work. Marcus drove past a garden where lavender curved in disciplined lines, stone statues watching from the shadows. Everything was too controlled, too intentional. 2 men in black suits waited at the steps. They didn't speak. They simply opened the doors like we were expected. Inside, the foyer swallowed me whole. 20-foot ceilings, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings in gold frames. The air smelled like old wood, perfume, and money that never had to explain itself. At the end of the hall stood a woman in a black silk dress, silver hair pinned tight. Her posture didn't demand obedience. It made you give it. Her eyes landed on Lily, and something shifted. So quick I almost missed it. "How old is the child?" she asked. A faint Italian accent softened the edges. 5, I said. She nodded, lips pressing together like she was holding back a thought. "She has eyes that tell stories," she said quietly. "That is rare." Footsteps sounded above us, unhurried. Vincent appeared at the top of the staircase. No suit today, just a white shirt, dark trousers. Somehow that made him worse. Not less powerful, but more real, like he didn't need armor here. His gaze found Lily first, then me. "Everything is ready," he said, and it wasn't a welcome. It was an instruction the house obeyed. Lucia, because my brain immediately labeled her as the center of gravity, tilted her head. "Let her play with Rosa," she said, the housekeeper's daughter. "You may follow Marcus." I hesitated, protective instinct rising, but Vincent's look steadied me, quiet, controlled, like a hand on my back. Lily took Rosa's hand without fear. Children were like that. They didn't carry the same history adults did. Marcus led me down corridors that opened into rooms that felt like separate lives. A library with leather-bound books, a music room with an antique piano, a dining space with glass walls overlooking a still lake. Then he opened a door and I stopped breathing. A studio, not some corner with a lamp and a backdrop. A real setup, light stands, diffusers, clean surfaces, professional gear arranged like someone had studied what I needed and built it overnight. Perfect window light spilled in from 3 directions. It didn't feel like generosity. It felt like orchestration. I stood there too long, trying to find the catch in the corners. Marcus waited without comment, as if he'd seen people freeze in rooms like this before. When he signaled me back toward the main rooms, my mind was still spinning. In the sitting area, Lily sat in a red velvet chair beside Rosa, giggling over glitter stickers and a picture book. Her laughter echoed in the high-ceilinged space like it didn't belong. And yet it did something to the air, softening it. Lucia sat near the window, watching Lily with a look I didn't understand at first. Not curiosity, not judgment. Something like grief brushing against relief. When Lucia turned to me, she gestured to the chair opposite. "She adapts quickly," Lucia said. "She has to," I answered, too honest. Lucia's gaze returned to Lily. "She reminds me of someone." I stayed still. Let her speak if she wanted to. "My granddaughter," Lucia said, voice steady but thin. "Sophia, Dominic's daughter. She died 2 years ago." My chest tightened. Lily hopped down and ran to me, pressing her head into my side the way she did when too many eyes turned her into a thing instead of a person. Lucia leaned forward slightly. "You don't need to be afraid," she said. "Vincent does not choose people at random." Her hand lifted, thin, dotted with age, and she placed it gently on Lily's hair. Lily looked up at her and smiled, bright and unguarded. Lucia didn't smile back, but her eyes glossed, quick. "I would like a photograph," Lucia said. as if it had been decided long before I walked in. Me and Lily, in the garden, under the maple. I nodded because my voice didn't exist anymore, and in that nod, I felt it, the shift. I hadn't entered this house for a job. I'd stepped into something unfinished, something waiting. And my daughter, my 5-year-old with cocoa on her breath, had just become the light everyone in this place kept staring at like it might heal a wound they never learned to live with. The party the next afternoon looked like the kind of elegance you only saw in glossy magazines stacked in dentist offices. White tables under October sky, crystal vases holding pale peonies and roses, string quartets near the garden wall, their music floating across the lawn like perfume. Maples burned gold and red behind everything, turning the estate into a postcard that felt staged, until you watched people move inside it. Vincent wore a dark suit, tie perfect, expression unreadable. Lucia stood at his side in sapphire silk, her posture regal, her eyes distant whenever they drifted toward Lily. Lily sat with Rosa at a table near the lavender. They bent over a puzzle, heads close. Every few minutes, Lucia's gaze returned to Lily like a needle finding the same groove. I worked the way I always did when I wasn't pretending for corporate clients. Slow, observant, hunting the moments people didn't curate. A father's hand on his daughter's back as she twirled, an older couple's fingers tightening as they sat, a brother's jaw flexing during a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Vincent watched me like he recognized the rhythm I moved in. When Lucia walked over to Lily and rested her hand on her shoulder, the late sun caught them both, silver hair and brown curls, haloing the scene with thin, soft light. I lifted the camera and pressed the shutter. No smiles, no posing. Just a powerful woman and a small girl in a garden full of memory. I knew before I checked the frame that it was the photograph that mattered. After the guests moved inside for dinner, Vincent approached. "You see what others overlook," he said, eyes on the camera. "Don't leave after you deliver the set. I want to review them with you." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't cruel either. It was personal. That night I lay in the guest room listening to the estate settle. Pipes, distant footsteps, wind tapping branches against glass. Lily slept curled around Rosa's bear, safe and exhausted. I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and searched Sophia Moretti. The public story was tidy. Gifted art student, bright future, tragic car accident after a New York exhibition. No scandal, no mess. But grief inside powerful families never sat that clean. In the morning, I carried the memory card to the workspace. Vincent was already there, sleeves rolled up, going through images one by one like each frame was evidence. He paused on the photo of Lucia's hand on Lily's shoulder and enlarged it. "Do you know my mother didn't speak to Dominic for 2 years?" he asked. I shook my head. After Sophia died, Dominic blamed the family, Vincent said, voice controlled. My mother blamed herself, but the man who pulled Sophia into the spiral was her lover. My skin chilled. "Who?" "A trafficker," Vincent said, each word placed carefully. "Connected to Russians." She hid it until it was too late. I stared at Lily's face on the screen, soft, unguarded, and felt my throat close. "That's why Dominic reacted," Vincent added. "He thinks any child near us becomes leverage." A repeat. Before I could ask more, a voice cut into the room behind me, sharp enough to slice the air. "Who are you?" I turned. Dominic Moretti filled the doorway like a wall. Salt and pepper hair, close cropped, broad shoulders under a black suit, eyes gray and heavy, the kind of eyes that had watched something awful and learned to survive it by never blinking first. "I'm Emily Parker," I said, forcing steadiness. "Vincent hired me for the event." Dominic stepped closer, gaze flicking to the laptop, landing on the photo of Lucia and Lily. His expression darkened, not with hate, but with something more dangerous. Recognition. "So this is what he's doing," Dominic said, voice low. "He thinks bringing a child here will soften her." I began. Dominic's eyes snapped to mine. "You have no idea what you've stepped into," he said, and the words weren't a threat. They were a warning shaped like anger. Then he looked past me, toward the hall, as if measuring how far the infection had already spread. "I don't want my son playing near a child I know nothing about," he said. "You understand?" The word son hit wrong, like a slip. Before I could catch it, he turned and left. The door shut hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. I stood frozen, breath shallow. The estate had looked perfect when I arrived. Now, hairline cracks showed everywhere. In the silence, in Vincent's controlled calm, in Lucia's haunted focus on Lily. And the worst part was the way Dominic had looked at my daughter, not like a stranger, like a ghost. That morning, 2 days later, felt normal for the first time. Sunlight in the greenhouse, Lily and Rosa laughing over cookies they'd baked, Vincent gone early for business, Lucia receiving an old friend from Italy, guards in the distance like shadows pretending they weren't there. I was on the laptop, adjusting photos, when dogs erupted near the side gate, feral barking, sudden and violent. Then Marcus burst into the room, face drained. "Emily," he said, voice tight. "Where's Lily?" My blood turned to ice. "In the garden, with Rosa." Marcus didn't answer. He snapped orders into a radio, fast and clipped. "Lock every gate. Check cameras. Now." I ran outside. The garden was empty. Only Rosa remained, sobbing beside the fountain, pointing with a shaking hand toward the western fence. "They took her," Rosa cried. "A black van. They pushed her in." The world narrowed to a tunnel. Minutes. It had taken minutes. Vincent returned near noon, walking in like the air itself moved out of his way. He didn't ask what happened. The look he gave me said he already knew. Anguish without sound. Fury held so tight it made the room feel colder. "Show me the footage," he said. They replayed it. The van rolling in like it belonged. Plates missing. A guard distracted by an internal call. 2 men moving fast. 10 seconds. Lily gone. Swallowed by the trees beyond the estate. Dominic punched a wall. Blood streaked the paneling. A message arrived an hour later. No text, just a video. Lily sat against a cement wall, hands bound with cloth, eyes huge with terror but unhurt. A man spoke off camera in Russian-accented English, smooth and merciless. "Lily stays alive if Vincent Moretti behaves." A paper flashed in front of the lens. 24 hours. Bellini account. Transaction code. No police. No Dominic. Or they would return her in pieces. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound that would break me in half. Dominic grabbed the phone, eyes blazing. "It can't be them," he growled. "We drove them out 5 years ago." Vincent watched the video once. Only once. And when it ended, his voice came out like a vow. "Alexei Baranov. The name meant nothing to me. It meant everything to them." "Russian Mafia," Vincent said. "He's back to prove we've gone soft." Marcus traced the signal. South District. Old warehouses. Dead zone. "We have a mole," Marcus added, grim. Lucia stood perfectly still, face pale. When she spoke, her calm was worse than anger. "He doesn't want money," she said. "He wants to show the city we can be touched." Vincent turned to me then, and for the first time his control cracked, just enough for me to see the desperation underneath. "I will bring Lily back," he said, "at any cost." I grabbed his hand like it was the only solid thing left. "I want to go with you," I said, because the words were already clawing at my throat. Vincent's eyes hardened. "No." When he said Lily's name after, when he said he couldn't think straight if I was in danger, something in his voice revealed an old injury I hadn't fully seen. Dominic escorted me upstairs. The door locked from the outside. No shouting, no threats, just a quiet cage made of power. From the balcony, I watched the convoy of black SUVs line up in the courtyard. Vincent wore a vest. Marcus spoke into an earpiece. Dominic's hand touched Vincent's shoulder, a silent exchange I didn't understand yet. Vincent looked up at me once. No words. Then he got in the car. The tires whispered out across the stone driveway and disappeared into the night. I sat alone with Lily's dropped handkerchief in my fist, staring at the printed photograph Lucia left on my table, Lily and Rosa smiling in the garden like nothing bad could ever reach them. And I understood the truth that had been hiding behind the chandeliers and the perfect hedges. This wasn't a family. This was a war with good manners. And my daughter had just become the line everyone would bleed over.